So there is something of a uh, minor, I don't know if I could say civil war in Mexico right now, but in Guadalajara area, the Jalisco cartel, their leader had just gotten assassinated, and what looks to be like a war zone right now in eastern and northeastern part of Mexico. So what's happening is there's a joint operation between Mexican and American forces to take out this particular cartel, which is at war with other cartels for dominance. This kind of violence has, to some degree, has spilled over into the United States. Remember, not that long ago, I believe the airport in El Paso was shut down over an issue that came from Mexico. So the United States, and I've been saying this before, that what's going on in Mexico affects the average American a lot more than, say, what's going on in Israel or in Russia. And the other thing is that you have to remember that that the leadership in Mexico is very corrupt, and they're sort of tied to the cartels. We have Sheinbaum, which is questionable. I mean, there's certain things that she can't do. Her hands are kind of tied because of what's going on because of the cartels in Mexico. You also have the Chinese and the Russians putting their sort of a spy base in Mexico to spy on Americans. And again, this has to do with the politics that are going on in Mexico. So we have the Latin American play here that Trump is doing. He knocked off Venezuela because Venezuela has always been an issue for the last couple of decades for the United States. And then you got Cuba and Mexico, okay? So Cuba has strategically been a thorn for like 5 or more decades for the United States, ever since Castro has taken over. You have the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it's always been a threat of foreigners having a base there while being basically off the coast of the United States, blocking potentially the Gulf of Mexico, from any kind of trade, right? So Cuba gets a lot of its support from Venezuela, and it gets support from Mexico. So they knocked off Venezuela, so Cuba's not getting its subsidized fuel. And you got Mexico, which is in part controlled by the cartels. So they're trying to knock that off too, to try to get the Western Hemisphere in line with American interests. Of course, you also have, like I said, the spillover of the cartels into the United States with, everything that's going on with that. You got the fentanyl, all the other drugs, human trafficking, and, going both ways of the border. You get human trafficking going from the United States into Mexico and vice versa. And this has also been a very huge problem. Mexico also historically has always been a mess politically. And I say this historically as in the entire history of Mexico. It's a relatively poor country. It's actually average compared to the rest of the world, but poor, say, compared to the United States. It's mountainous, it's rugged, it's got different climate zones. You got the tropical jungles in the south, you got desert in the north. And you got all these mountains there, and just the way Mexico is that infrastructure is more expensive to build because of its mountainous territory. It doesn't have land that's suitable agriculturally like the United States does. So it's got an area in, Tamaulipas, that is sort of subtropical, that you could do a lot of things agriculturally. But if you get to the south, it's all tropical, and you're not going to grow things like wheat and corn. Well, they grow corn in the mountains, but not like in the Yucatan. So it's like tropical jungle. It's not really conducive for building like first world type infrastructure. And neither it is like in the northern mountains either, where you have concerns about water. So Mexico is kind of a difficult country to manage. And you have like families or cartels or gangs that take control of certain parts of Mexico that are difficult to control, like I said, because of the lack of infrastructure to get there, and people are relatively poor, and you have a disarmed population, like I said. So it's like a perfect storm. It's like a mess where you have these little local factions, little local loyalties that end up getting powerful, that then corrupt the government, and it just turns into a semi-narco state. And then that spills over to the United States. And also it potentially is a threat for foreign powers. Like I said, Russia, China, they give to, some do a lot of trading with Cuba. So this type of situation is something that I think from the United States' perspective needs to happen. But in the process, and I'll put a link in the description below of an article which it gives some video clips from X showing the basically war zone right now in this town in Mexico. This will continue. And as you get this kind of violence, you have a lot of violence within Mexico too, because if you got the leader getting taken out, you got, like it fractures this cartel, and then you're going to have like disputes within the cartel too. So this is sort of the beginning. The result of this, how do you make this end? You're going to have to cooperate with the Mexican government. You're going to have to apply pressure to flush out the corruption. So anyway, I'll put a link in the description below. It's a bit of a complicated situation, but it's a situation that needs to be addressed by the United States.